All right, so we've discussed ethos and logos. Now let's talk about pathos, or the emotional appeal. If you're going to appeal to emotion, you need to be aware of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Once again, I've included a really short video, a link to a really short video that describes this hierarchy of needs, and I suggest you watch it. I'm only going to touch on it, the basics of it here. Maslow's hierarchy of needs deals with human motivation. You're motivated to act if one of these needs needs to be fulfilled. And so Maslow ranks the needs this way. The most basic human need, number one, is survival. When your survival is threatened, you're motivated to act. The second most basic human need is safety. Much like survival, when your safety is threatened, you're motivated to act. The third most basic human need is the need to belong, to feel loved, to feel like you're a part of a community. And so you can capitalize on that to motivate someone to act. The fourth most basic need is to feel good about yourself and to know that others respect and value you. And the fifth most basic need is the need for self-actualization. That's the need to realize our fullest potential, to accomplish our purpose in life. Those 5 needs help you structure your argument. If you can appeal to one of those, and again, the most basic has the strongest motivational appeal. The least one, the self-actualization one, has the least motivational appeal. But if you can find a place for your argument in that scale and appeal to that emotion behind those needs, you'll motivate your audience to action. An emotional appeal will target a threat against one of those basic needs. In other words, you may say smoking will kill you. Now that statement alone, without any supporting facts, is an emotional appeal. It targets your need to survive. If that kind of an appeal is going to work, you have to meet 3 criteria. First of all, the speaker must be credible. Pathos is not going to work without ethos. You need some credibility. Secondly, the threat that you describe has to be a real threat. If your audience perceives that you're making a mountain out of a molehill, then they're not going to be motivated to act. And then third, there must be a viable course of action to alleviate the threat. There has to be a way that they can move, or a solution to the problem that they can enact in their own lives. You get someone all motivated to act and you don't give them a feasible means of acting, then you don't accomplish anything. So that's pathos. Pathos appeals to the emotions. It appeals to the needs that someone has, and it adds motivational strength to your argument. If you're going to deliver a persuasive speech, you need to understand that there are 3 guiding principles that can help you. The first is this: take small steps. That's the key to persuasion. Don't try to convince an audience that doesn't read the Bible at all that they need to read the whole thing. Instead, try to convince them to read a chapter a day, because that's doable. That's something that they can handle. That's something they can manage. And because that's something that they can do, they're more likely to do it. And you're more likely to be able to persuade them. So when you're persuading an audience, always take small steps. If you rush too far ahead, if you get too big of a step, you're going to lose the majority of your audience. So key in on your audience, find something that they can actually accomplish, and present that as a first step towards the thing that you're trying to persuade them to do. So if I'm trying to persuade you to pray, I don't start out by saying you need to pray 3 hours a day. I start out by telling you, you need to pray every single morning, even if it's just for 10 minutes. Who can't spare 10 minutes in the morning for prayer? And then you build on that later on. So always take small steps. That's the key to persuasion. Get your foot in the door first. Then you can open up the door. Secondly, everyone strives for consistency. Remember the theory of cognitive dissonance that I talked about last week? I did my last master's thesis on it. Everyone has an inner drive to achieve consistency. It's a motivation that arises from within. Appeal to that. If you want to change a behavior, show how it's inconsistent with the belief structure of your audience. And so let's go back to the audience that doesn't read the Bible. If you're dealing with that audience, you might appeal to their sense of consistency by making an argument that real Christians, genuine Christians, read their Bible because that's how they hear from God. And then if they self-identify as a Christian, then you've pointed out an inconsistency in their actions. Their behavior doesn't match their belief, and they will always be motivated to bring those two together to make them consistent. So you'll appeal to consistency, and that will be a successful way to persuade an audience. Finally, you have to recognize this. The middle of your speech is the weakest point in the speech. Put your strongest argument either at the beginning to draw your audience in or at the end to firmly establish your point. If you put your strongest argument in the middle of your speech, then you're going to decrease your odds of being successful in persuading your audience. So structure your speech with your strongest argument either at the beginning or the end. Now, the final segment of this chapter, and again, I'm not going to get real deeply into it, is logical fallacies. They are outlined in your book. Your book has 14 different logical fallacies. A logical fallacy is what happens whenever your reasoning is flawed. And you need to make sure that you read through the list, look it over, familiarize yourself with it, because there will be, listen, I'm not saying maybe, there will be test questions on the final that deal with these fallacies. I may ask you, what is a straw man? I may ask you, what is an ad hoc or an ad hominem fallacy? And you need to be aware of what those are. Now, they're all detailed in the book. I could read them to you, but that's all I would be doing is just reading you what is there available for you to read for yourself. You need to make sure you do that. Familiarize yourself with that. There will be test questions that address them. Now, I've included a very brief video that covers many more than just these 14 fallacies. This young lady covers 31 fallacies in 8 minutes. Watch it. Familiarize yourself with it. But also, don't neglect the material in the book, because the material on your test, the test questions, will come from the 14 fallacies covered in the textbook. So to wrap things up, speech number 4 is due this week. This is your commemorative or exemplum speech. This one's a little easier. It's only worth 50 points. It's a slight diversion from some of the more serious stuff we've been doing, and it gives you a moment maybe of rest before you get into the more serious speech that you're going to have next time, the last speech in this class, the persuasive speech. We only have 3 weeks left in the class. I plan to start building the final this weekend, and I'll produce a study guide for that final. I hope I have it posted by sometime next week. So be looking out for that. You'll want to get that. You'll want to study the study guide, because if you get the study guide nailed down, you'll have everything that's going to be on the test nailed down. You'll be solid on the test. And I want you to do well on the test. So we'll be putting together a solid study guide for you, hopefully this weekend, have it out the first part of next week. That wraps things up. I hope you have a great day, a great week. Enjoy preview weekend. Show all those visiting high school students why Urshan College is the place to be. God bless you. You have a great day.